Welcome to Quran Stories Animated. In every episode, we share the timeless lessons of the Holy Quran, the stories of prophets, their trials and patience, their faith and obedience to Allah. These stories guide us, inspire us, and remind us of Allah's wisdom and mercy. Join us as we bring the words of the Quran to life. In the royal palace of ancient Egypt, the night was calm and silent. The king slept deeply, wrapped in fine linen robes. In his dream, he stood beside the Nile River. 7 fat cows emerged from the water, grazing peacefully. Then 7 thin cows appeared, devouring the fat ones. The king gasped in fear as the river turned dark. The vision changed. He saw fields of grain. 7 green ears stood tall and strong. Then 7 dry ears blew away in the hot wind. He awoke trembling, whispering for his servants. At dawn, the palace came alive with whispers. The king sat upon his golden seat, troubled and pale. He said, "O my advisors, explain my dream if you can." The men bowed, but looked at one another in silence. One said, "It is only confusion of the mind." Another said, "No one can explain such a vision." The king's heart grew heavy. He raised his hands in frustration. He said, "Who can tell me its meaning?" The court fell silent, the torches flickering. Far away in the prison, the messenger remembered. He had once promised Yusuf to speak of him. Now Allah made him recall the truth. He ran through the palace gates to the king. He said, "There is a man in prison who can explain. He is noble, wise, and speaks with knowledge from Allah." The king's eyes widened with hope. He said, "Bring him to me at once." The messenger bowed and hurried away. He went to the prison with the king's command. Inside the prison, Yusuf sat in prayer. The messenger entered with excitement. He said, "Yusuf, the king seeks your wisdom." Yusuf opened his eyes calmly. He replied, "I will tell the truth by Allah's guidance." He listened as the man described the dream. Yusuf's face showed deep understanding. He said softly, "Allah has revealed its meaning to me." The messenger watched in awe. The firelight flickered on the clay walls. Yusuf said, "7 years of good harvest will come. Then 7 years of drought will follow. Store the grain in its ears for the hard years ahead." Thus Allah saves those who plan with faith. The messenger nodded with wonder. He said, "Your wisdom shines like light in darkness." Yusuf smiled humbly and replied, "It is from Allah alone." He said, "Return to the king and tell him this message." The messenger bowed with respect. He hurried out into the desert dawn. At the palace, the king waited anxiously. The messenger entered and knelt before him. He said, "O king, a man named Yusuf knows the truth." He repeated the dream and its meaning. The king listened in amazement. He said, "Bring this man to me immediately." The court murmured in curiosity. The guards prepared their horses. The desert wind carried the sound of hooves. The journey to Yusuf began. When the guards reached the prison, Yusuf stood waiting, his face calm, his eyes full of faith. They said, "The king calls you to his court." Yusuf said, "Ask him first about the women who accused me. I seek truth, not power." The guards were surprised by his words. The messenger returned with Yusuf's message. The king admired his honesty and patience. He said, "Bring the women before me." The court filled with whispers again. The women stood before the king. He said, "Tell me of Yusuf and your plot." They lowered their heads in shame. One said, "He is innocent. We were wrong." The king turned to Yusuf and smiled. He said, "This day you are free and honored." Yusuf bowed in gratitude to Allah. Tears of relief filled his eyes. He said, "My Lord, you are the most merciful." The prison doors opened for the last time. Yusuf entered the royal court. The king rose to greet him. He said, "From this day, you are in charge of Egypt's stores. You will protect the people from the coming famine." Yusuf bowed with humility. He said, "I accept by Allah's will." The king placed his hand on Yusuf's shoulder. The court applauded in respect. Light from the high window fell upon Yusuf's face. It was the beginning of his freedom. That night, Yusuf stood alone in prayer. He said, "My Lord, you planned all things with wisdom." His voice echoed softly through the empty hall. The torches flickered with golden light. He remembered the well, the prison, and Allah's mercy. He said, "You never abandon those who trust you." A calm wind passed through the open court. The stars shone brightly over Egypt. Yusuf smiled in peace and gratitude. His story of patience and faith continued. Thank you for watching Quran Stories. The stories of the Holy Quran are lessons for all time about faith, patience, and guidance. We hope this story inspired you and reminded you of Allah's wisdom. Subscribe and continue with us as we share more timeless lessons from the Holy Quran.